All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Cryptid Counterculture. I'm your host, Lon Barton. And tonight, we're going to do things just a little bit differently because tonight, I'm going to tell y'all my story and what got me so interested and involved in the world of cryptids and paranormal. So, if that's something you're interested in, sit back, relax, and hope you enjoy. First off, I was born and raised in South Alabama. That's where I still live at to this day, all in the same little area over here. And my dad, he was a true outdoorsman, not in the sense of what a lot of people call outdoorsman today, but he was the real deal. He trapped, he hunted, he fished, he did all of that. And he carried me along with him as a little kid, to learn and to experience that. And that's something that I cherish to this day. And so I know a little bit about animals. I know a little bit about what we have in this area. I'm no expert on anything, but I know a little bit about everything that we have around here. And to be honest with y'all, for years, I never put any thought in cryptids or the paranormal. And to this day, I still don't necessarily believe in ghosts. Uh, I'm a Christian. I have my thoughts on it, but I knew demonic entities existed, and because the Bible said they did. And part two will actually be about a demonic encounter that I had, but you have to wait till next week to hear that one. But I never put any thought into that, and I never watched any kind of real horror movies and stuff until I got grown. Because I never knew where I was going to be. Like I said, my dad was outdoorsman. We were on the riverbank, yeah, all hours of the day and night. We were in the deep woods. He's had me up before daylight, going run trap lines in the woods, and we caught bobcat, fox, coons, pretty much anything you think around it. We squirrel hunted, we deer hunted, we rabbit hunted, we did it all, and it was a good life as a kid. That's something I think a lot of people miss out on nowadays. But I'm not so much into it now as I used to be. But I had a good, like I said, I had a good idea of what was in the woods around here, and I never put much thought in cryptids or anything like that. My dad, he never talked about anything like that. So if he didn't say anything about it, I didn't pay much attention to it. And but as I got older and I got a job where I had to travel a ways off, I have a long commute to work. I had a friend that's up there at work that listened to podcasts. And he got me to listening to them. And, I started out on true crime, things like that. And then I started getting some episodes coming up about, Bigfoot, things like that. And I'd listen to it. It was just entertainment to me. And I thought Bigfoot, if it was real, because I had watched, a few episodes of Monster Quest and things like that. And I thought, well, if it's real, it's way up north in the, Pacific Northwest, up in Canada, in that vast wilderness that's up there. And didn't think much of it past that. I just didn't care if it was real or not. Wasn't a big deal to me. Then I ran across a few episodes about Dogman. Now, to begin with, I would have laughed at it. I thought it was make believe. It was just it was entertainment to me. That's all it was. And but on the confessionals, I heard a couple of episodes, and one of them was the Martin Groves encounter, and that kind of changed my perspective on it because he kind of described something that I had experienced in my life, and that was when it growled. It shook his insides and shocked him. And when I heard him describe that, and I heard it in a couple other, encounter reports. I said to myself, you know, I've experienced that one time, and that kinda sent me down a rabbit hole that I'm still in today, and, I'll just get right into the encounter that I had. Uh, it was in late 1995, possibly early 1996. It was during the wintertime, and, my dad had passed away, uh, of a heart attack my senior year of high school, and I graduated in '95. And we hadn't been long moved to where we lived at that time, where mom still lives at now. Uh, Dad had bought a piece of property back off in the woods, and he had about 6 acres there, and, we built a house, and, when I say we built it, we built it. Uh, he was a carpenter, and, we built the house, and, he wasn't quite finished with it. I mean, it was livable inside, but it was not, uh, completely trimmed out and everything on the inside when he passed away, and, but anyway, at one time, we were the only ones back in there, and then another guy had come in and bought some property after we had cleaned up and built right there, and, he he separated out in lots and was selling it, and, for a subdivision, which really never materialized. We had one guy buy a lot up on the corner. You can see his house from the front porch on my mom's house, and, but they had built a house right there, and, it had went bankrupt. He had went bankrupt and lost that house. There wasn't nobody living in that house, and then on the other side, on past him up there, was my aunt. My aunt had bought a little property up there and, had moved a mobile home in up there until she could build her house. And my cousin lived up there. He was the same age as I was. So I was about 18 years old at this time. And my brother was 3 years younger than me. He was 15. And, it was wintertime. It was cool. And, we were up there at my cousin's house playing around one night. And in the backyard of that house that was, across from his mom's, that was vacant, there was a big backyard light, big light on a pole, and it was bright, and it shined down into a bottom that was between my aunt's house and, that house. And there was this barbed wire fence run across the property boundary that run down and then, came down the road to my aunt's, driveway up next to the little dirt road that ran there. And, we were back there playing around one night, and I ran down in the bottom. That place had been cut. Trees had been cut off of it, probably a year and a half, 2 years before that. And it was grown up, it was thick. It was a mess. A lot of treetops and limbs in there. A lot of broom sage growing up, a privet hedge, all kind of shrubs and stuff coming up and sapling trees, and it was kind of nasty down in there. But I had run off in the bottom down there and hid in a treetop, this old oak treetop that was laying in there that they had left, and my cousin and my brother, they was going to try to find me. Now, I guess we was playing a little hide and go seek. We didn't have all the cell phones and stuff that they have now to keep them occupied. We actually had to get out and play. And so I'm watching them. I can see them as they cross over. They go through the side yard. I'm in the backyard behind in that nasty mess down in there and all. They cross over and it's like it's a little hollow, but there's no trees in it other than a few little saplings and stuff and a bunch of shrubs and like I said, it's grown up, it's nasty briars and things like that. And they go across the side yard and come to the fence that's on the property boundary. And they're slipping down that fence, and they're gonna try to come around and force me out from where I'm at. They don't know exactly where I'm at, but they're gonna try to find me. But I can see them because that fence row is backlit by that big light in that backyard of that house that's vacant. And they're slipping down that fence row, and I'm watching them. And then, they get to a point to where the light runs out. You can't see anymore. And they cross out right there's like as the fence post where it ends. And they cross on out into the darkness. And I can hear them. I can hear them trying to slip through. It's like I said, it's thick. They're making a lot of noise. Well, about a minute or so after they had got out of where I couldn't see them, I hear the nastiest, gnarliest growl I've ever heard in my life. And like I said, my dad trapped and he hunted and he did that. I've heard bobcats growl, foxes make all kind of noise, raccoons, any kind of animal that you could trap, he caught, and we had dealings with. And but this right here was something different, and it was it rattled my insides. And that's what made me, when I heard the podcast, made me think about this incident that I had when I was 18 years old. It shook my insides, like it shocked me, like I froze. I didn't know what to do. And my mind is going in 1,000 different directions. I'm trying to figure out what this is. Could it possibly have been one of them that made this noise to try to get me to move? But I'm not moving. I can't move. I'm frozen. And at that point in time, I see something appear back up by the fence row where the light is, and it's my brother. And he has got up on top of the fence post. He's climbed up on the top strand of the wire, and he's looking. And I guess my cousin had already went over the fence because he's on the other side of the fence in the backyard of that other house. And one of them says, "Which way did it go? Which way did it go?" And the other one said, "There it goes." And at that point, I see the movement, and it's between me and them, and it runs down that bottom. Man, I'm 6'2". Oh, I'm not small. Oh, and some of this stuff was head higher, maybe a little taller than me, maybe a little shorter, and it's thick. And there's bushes and trees and limbs going left and right, and then I can see us because of that light that's shining down from that back of that house. It's not real bright, but I can see it, and it goes down through there. I never see what it is, but I mean, the bushes are tearing loose as it comes through. I mean, it's making its way through this thick brush, and it's moving so fast that when it starts to run, I'm going to try to run out of the treetop up back to the house. Before I can even get 2 or 3 steps, it's gone. It's cleared 100 yards, and it has jumped the fence there at the road and cleared the road because the next day there were no tracks in the road, in that dirt road. And my brother and my cousin had ran. They were up at behind that house at that big light, and I had to come up to the road that ran in front of my aunt's house, a little dirt road. It dead ended not far from past her house, and they yelled down at me, and I said, "It's not here. It's gone." And they break and run down the road fast as they can to get down there to where I'm at. And we don't know what it is, and we're thinking, we're trying to come up with all the things it could be, and we can't. And so we go in the house and we spend the night down there that night. And the next day we get up and we go check for tracks. And like I said, I grew up in the woods. I know what a bobcat track looks like, and a coyote track, and a raccoon track, and pretty much anything. I could pick it out. And there's nothing in the road. The only thing I can see is where my brother and them had ran down, and it was hard right there. I will say it was a kind of a hard piece of dirt right there, but there was nothing even torn up where it touched the road, and that's why I always said I thought it jumped the road. And it was a narrow road. I mean, it could fit one vehicle down it. If two vehicles on it, you'd have to pull up on the side and let the other one pass. Just a little country dirt road, almost like a logging road running through there. And later on that day, we're telling my aunt and her husband, which was my cousin's stepdad. His name was William, and William was he wasn't he was a tough guy, you know. He was a tough guy, and he gets to making fun of us a little bit, you know. And it wasn't nothing mean or nasty about it. He was just having fun with us boys, you know. That was a deer, and y'all scared each other. He's laughing at us. I mean, he's having a good time with it. And I'm like, no, William, no, that wasn't a deer. A deer don't growl. I know what a deer is. You know, we know what that is. And at that time, we didn't have hogs in here. We didn't have anything like there was no wild hogs. They're here now, but they weren't in here at that point in time. And and he laughed at us and kind of made fun of us, and until he had a run in with it a few nights later. And what happened with him was, I don't know how they knew it was down. I don't know. I don't remember them having a dog or anything at that time, but apparently it showed back up, and that was their property right there where we had run into it on. And it was down there with William. He had an old 12 gauge single barrel shotgun. He popped him a buckshot in it, and he said, "I'm gonna go down here and I'm gonna find out what this is. I'm gonna show y'all. It ain't nothing to it." So he crosses over and goes down to it, and it's dark. And you know, back in the '90s, we didn't have the lights and stuff that we have now. So he's trying to get this thick. He's getting down there to it. Well, when he comes up on it, this thing comes towards him. It doesn't run from him like an animal does. You know, most animals, anything we have around here, they run from you. And this doesn't run from him. This comes towards him. And when it starts to come towards him, it comes towards him. And he decides this 12 gauge ain't enough. And he runs, he breaks and runs, and he comes back up the hill to the house and comes up in the house, and he's like, I don't know what that is, but I don't want any part of it because this 12 gauge ain't gonna be enough. He said, that's big. And he said, it ain't scared. And you know, to my knowledge, that was the last encounter anybody had with it up there. Now my cousin, he playfully named it Ernie, the Sasquatch. He thought it was, you know, it was a joke. And from that point on, for several years, if anything happened, you know, it was Ernie did it. Ernie did it. You know, something outside making noise. Well, it's just Ernie, and it was kind of a joke to us. And and I never, you know, I thought it was a bear. I had always said it was a bear. And even though we weren't supposed to have bears in this part of South Alabama at that time, you know, I said, you know, this one probably came through, and we just happened to run up on it. And that was just the explanation I gave it. And I didn't think much about it for years until I started listening to these podcasts with these dogman encounters. And that got me to thinking. And then I got to thinking about stories that my granny told us. And she only lived about 2 miles from where this happened at when we were kids. You know, she always told us the spooky ghost stories and things like that. But she had one particular story that her dad told her, and we called it the thing. And because she didn't know what it was. But she told the story that her dad was on his way to her house one night. They were raised on the She was raised on the opposite end of the dirt road from where my granddaddy lived at. And it's a pretty long little dirt road. And when she married him, she moved over to his side and on their family property, and that's where they raised the kids. And but her dad and mom, you know, lived on the other side. And for whatever reason, I don't know if he was living with her at that time. I know for a short period of time he lived with her, but I can't remember if that's what it was or not. But anyway, he walked everywhere. He didn't drive, he walked everywhere. And for one whatever reason, he was headed over to her house one night. It was done got late, and he was headed over. And as he's walking down that dirt road, something starts pacing him, and it's following him on that road. When he'd take a step, it'd take a step. He'd stop, and it'd stop. He never could see what it was, and he went all the way down, a couple miles down that dirt road with this happening. And when he gets to the bottom of the hill where you go up the hill to where my grandmother lived at, there's a creek that runs there and a bridge across the creek. And he crosses the bridge and he starts up the bridge. And there's a curve as you go up, and it curves and goes around and comes on up to my grandmother's house. And he stops and turns around, and standing at the foot of that bridge over there on the other side of that bridge is a big wolf, and with yellow eyes. I remember that part told to me. And he comes on up the hill and tells, my grandmother that what happened, and that it wouldn't cross the bridge. Said it came to the edge of the bridge, but it wouldn't cross the bridge for whatever reason. And at that time in that house, she had a painting of a wolf in the dining room or somewhere in there, and he said it looked like that, but it was a lot bigger, and it had yellow glowing eyes. And, as a kid, that was just a spooky story. It was fun to us, and that's something we look forward to when we come stay the summer with her and stuff like that with some of these stories, and several of them are about that road over there. But that was the one that really, when I got to listen to these dogman encounters and then got thinking about my own encounter that I had in the mid-90s, and then right down the road, that was told us, and that was told as that was a true story, that was what her dad had happened to her. And then, it's probably in the 50s or 60s when that happened. I'm not exactly sure. And, but that was what was told. But we don't have wolves in South Alabama, As a kid, I didn't think about that. But as I've gotten grown, we don't have wolves down here. And if we did, they wouldn't be, big. And coyotes are relatively, they started coming in probably in the early 80s. I remember my dad talking about them coming in. They wasn't native here. We didn't need them here. And, but, that's what was told. And then on that same road, just a little over a year ago, it was in January of 2025. Yeah, 2025. It's, January 2025. There's some people that live on that same road where the thing occurred, where the incident with the thing occurred, which is only a few miles from right here where my encounter happened at. And they had some dogs killed. And it wasn't a normal, killing. Uh, they had a son that left for school that morning. He's driving age. His mom left for work about 8 o'clock, and the dad had already gone to work. And when the son gets out of school, he comes on home. It's a little bit before 3, between 2 and 3 o'clock. And he comes in the backyard, and there's 3 dead dogs of theirs. And one of them was decapitated. His head was about 20 feet from the body. And from the pictures I saw, it looked almost like the head had been pulled off. There was another dog that didn't have any marks on it that was in front of a shed door. Like he had been trying to get in the shed and just died of a heart attack, was scared to death. And then there was one that ran in a kennel. They had dog houses in a kennel, but they didn't keep them locked in the kennel. They just had the dog houses in there. And he had tried to get in there away from it. What had killed him and had eaten the insides of him. And the pictures are pretty gruesome. But the strange thing is there wasn't a lot of blood. And my brother had went over. They had called him over to come take a look at it. And he said, "I've never seen anything like this. I don't know what animal would kill like this." And he said they looked around, so there was no signs of any kind of the ground wasn't torn up, because was it a wild hog? Because we do have a few wild hogs around here now. And, he said, "No." He said, "The ground wasn't rooted up or anything like that with no signs. Couldn't find any tracks anywhere." Uh, Now we've seen coyote kills before on goats and other things, livestock. It's normally pretty nasty. This wasn't nasty like that. This was pretty clean, and, the pictures bear that out. They're not real nasty. But like I said, other than the head being ripped off of one and about 20 feet away from where the body was of the one dog. Now, these weren't huge dogs. These were probably a little bit less than knee high. You know, my brother called them half grown dogs, and all. But people say, well, maybe it was a bear. But why would a bear kill all three of the dogs? Now, there was one dog that survived that had a big slash around on the back hip. He had a area. He had a big gash, and he survived. But the other dogs weren't. And what scared the dog to death? And these dogs, I just don't think were trying to fight a bear. You know, if you had some bulldogs or some of these hunting hounds, yeah, you might could see them because that's instinctual to them to do that kind of thing. You know, to hunt and to kill and to get tangled up with something like that. Other people said maybe it was a big cat. Well, a big cat and these animals, they generally take their kill with them, and they're gonna come back to it, and they're gonna eat it. And this one of them was partially eaten, but the others were not. I mean, what can take the head of a dog clean off? I don't know, and I've never claimed it to be a dog man around here. I don't know what it was, and it could be something perfectly natural. And you know, that's just what happened here, and that's what really drew me down this rabbit hole that I've not come out of yet. Is these what happened to me and the stories that have come out, and there's a lot of different ideas and thoughts on it. I got people in the Facebook group Discovering Dogman and the Unexplained, and they believe it's purely natural animal. Uh, I don't buy that, and I could be wrong, and they could be right, and I'm very respectful with and I'll be the first one to tell anybody I don't know what they are, and I used to would have said that people were crazy that said that these things were real, something like a dog man, but as times went by and I've looked into this, everybody's not lying, and everybody's not mistaken. Um, I have my own thoughts on what they are, and, we can get into that on another episode. But I will say this, I don't believe them to be purely natural animals. Uh, is that what I have around here? I have no idea. And I don't claim that it is. Now, I do have reports of people seeing them, you know, 30 miles away, and not too far from here is what people call the Bigfoot capital of Alabama, over in a neighboring county. That they have a lot of Bigfoot sightings over that way. Is it real? I don't know. I've never seen one. But I don't think everybody's lying. And that's just my thoughts on it. Like I said, I have my own theories on things. I don't try to force them down anybody's throat. I am a Christian, so everything my thoughts I base off of biblical thinking. And a lot of people say, that's a bias. Well, yeah, it is a bias. But if it's the correct bias, and I believe it is, then that's all right. Because everybody else has their own bias as well, whether it be for the scientific and we all know with science is whoever throws the most money at it's gonna get. That's what they're gonna side up with 9 times out of 10. So I don't put a whole lot of weight on what science says all the time. There's some things I believe, but we all know that mainstream science nowadays can be easily bought. But and we've seen all that in 2020, 2019, and 2020 with what went on. So that's my thoughts on it. But that's my first encounter, guys. The next one will be a demonic encounter that happened a few years later. And with what I just talked about, I don't claim to know what it was, but on the next one, I know exactly what it was. And I looked it in the eyes. So stay tuned for that one. And if you really want to hear these guys, I've already been on one podcast, and it's a good friend of mine, Matthew Orton, has the Drunken Cryptids podcast. And I did both of these encounters on his, and he kind of inspired me to start my own podcast in a way. Real great guy. Uh, I really recommend everybody check out his podcast. But if you want to listen to those over there, I don't know what episode numbers they were, but it was the first one was Stalked in Alabama was the episode name, and the second one was Its Eyes Were Red. And so if you want to, go check them out over there. But I want to thank y'all for hanging around with me, guys, and listening to me ramble on. I ask y'all to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and be sure to come join me at the Discovering Dogman and the Unexplained over on Facebook, and email me anything you want to on the cryptidcounterculture@gmail.com. So, thanks again, guys, for hanging around. I hope y'all have a good night, and we'll catch y'all on the next one.